knowledge, unlabeled lens who believe that working people around the world have real questions.
Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Standpoint. Now, the first showdown between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump was closely watched not only in the U.S., but around the world. Now, Tuesday's debate, the first and only scheduled showdown between Trump and Harris, the first time the two met in person, was widely considered the most consequential night of the 2024 election. It was particularly high stakes for Harris, as voters are less familiar with her from a personal and policy perspective, considering her late entrance into the race. While she did not float any new policy proposals during the debate, she and Trump traded their usual barbs over the economy, the troubled U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, the border, and abortion. The debate came a little over 2 months after President Joe Biden's disastrous debate with Trump that effectively ended his presidential campaign, paving Harris' path to securing the Democratic nomination. Now, joining me to discuss this is the president of the constituency for Africa, Melvin Foote. He joins me from Washington, D.C. via Zoom. Good to have you join us.
Thank you.
Let me start by getting your thoughts on the debate. Many have said that it went in the favor of Harris, but there's some who thought that the scenario wasn't fair on Trump. What's your assessment of the debate?
Well, Vice President Harris certainly won the debate. It was no question about it. Some say here with a knockout. President Trump, former President Trump, thought that he could just push her around because he really didn't know her. She was the vice president for the last 3.5 years. In this country, that means you basically follow the lead of the president. And so this is her first time stepping out of the limelight of President Biden and stand on her own, and she showed very well. It was well received here. The African diaspora is thrilled with Kamala Harris as the presidential candidate, and so are the women. The women across the United States are finally waking up saying, this is our time. So I think by and large, it turned the campaign, it definitely turned toward her as a likely next president of the United States.
And I wanted to dig into that further. How has the debate? How are voters now viewing Trump and Harris after the debate?
Well, Trump also made some missteps. He has a habit of throwing out rumors, and he talked about some Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, and he said that they're eating dogs and they're eating cats. And here we have a chance to verify facts immediately. They have a whole team that immediately verify facts, and that's found to be unverifiable. The police chief said, no, this didn't happen. So here you're telling all of your base that these black refugees are doing this kind of thing in your city. And it created bomb threats. It created we're going to get you kind of attitude. This is not how you treat people. And, so very unfairly. So I think the voters, Trump voters, are certainly going to support him the best they can. But I think there's a lot of lack of enthusiasm among general Republicans about Trump. They don't think that this is the way our country should go forward. And on the other side of it, there's a lot more enthusiasm about Kamala Harris. She comes across as a person who knows what she's doing. She's very tough on the issues. And I think she would be very fair to the American people, all American people, black, white, yellow, brown, or whatever. So I think that the tide has turned. We have about less than a month, a little over a month before the election takes place. My assessment is that Kamala Harris will be the next president of the United States.
Well, that would be for Americans to decide. But I wanted to talk about the undecided voters, because the idea of the debate, many would say, it is not to sway supporters, but to try and reach the undecided voters. Have they been able to reach both of them, reach the undecided voters with their messaging?
Both of the candidates are going through these swing states. They're going through Pennsylvania, they're going through Arizona, they're going through Georgia, they're going to North Carolina, and other swing states. There's a lot of people who are totally dissuaded about the politics. They hate all of this fighting and yelling and all of the things that go along with politics. And so they say, well, look, I'm not even going to vote. A lot of black voters even. So I'm not even going to vote. A lot of young people, I'm not even going to vote. But I think what Kamala Harris is doing is getting those people saying, I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote, and I'm going to vote for you. And that's really, really big when it comes down to a narrow election. I think, we still got a ways to go. And, you can't say for sure that Kamala is going to win until people actually go to the poll and cast their vote. And so it will be November the 4th is when we're really going to understand who's going to be the next president of the United States. But right now, you're just trying to persuade these people not to get off the fence and go one way or go the other way, but go make your voices heard. And that is really the strong thing about American democracy. It does give you a chance to to weigh in to weigh in on your candidate of choice. So that's where we are right now.
You don't believe that perhaps Trump has also been able to sway some undecided voters his way when you look at how, for example, the assassination attempt, on his life. Some people generally believe that the cases against him are a political witch hunt. And you don't think that also has gotten him sympathy from undecided voters?
Well, I think the American mindset the mindset is real short. And even though that happened in July, it seemed like it was a long time ago. And nobody's blaming the Democrats for that. The guy who perpetuated the Republican. The security by and large was responsible of the Republican campaign. So nobody's saying the Democrats did. It's not a kind of a thing that. So I think the undecided are gonna get involved based on the issue. Who's going to do the best job of supporting what I believe? And that means faith-based organizations, that means young people, that means women, that means blacks, that means people who, by and large, are not the main beneficiaries of the American system. And so I think it still remains to be seen, but I'm confident that Kamala Harris is, at the end of the day, is going to be the next president.
And let's talk about low information voters, those who have said, look, they really don't know anything about Kamala Harris, whether her person or her policies. In terms of the debate, did she do a successful job in putting herself out there, who she is, and then her policies?
I think she did. And the fact that Taylor Swift, who was an iconic, singer, came out immediately and said, I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. And a million of her followers immediately signed up and say, I'm with you. I think she's also gotten Beyonce, who was another major singer, and others in her camp. So you're going to hear more and more leading up to the actual vote. You're going to see more and more of the people who they respond to. They respond to the rap singers. They respond to musicians. They respond to athletes, the basketball players, LeBron James, people like that. And you're going to see in the next few weeks, more and more of them going to come out saying, I'm with Kamala Harris. And so I think she did a better job of reaching these non-committed people than Trump. A lot of Trump supporters were really first-time voters in the last election when Trump won the presidency. They, for the first time, they voted. But they're not enthusiastically looking to go to the polls. It takes a lot of effort to get up in the morning, go to the poll, stand in line, all of this kind of thing take hours really. And I'm not so sure that a lot of those voters, a lot of his hardcore voters are going to see the interest. And a lot of them got in trouble, when we had the riot at the U.S. Capitol, and they're saying, okay, a lot of Trump supporters are in jail even now. And so did he bail them out? No. They got in trouble on his behalf, and did he bail them out? No. He said, oh, if I get back in, I'm gonna get them all out. Well, is that good enough for people who have already suffered for these last 4 years because they voted for him? I'm not sure it is. So I think, the tide to be turned. many of us, I'm a Democrat, so I'm obviously supporting Kamala Harris, but I think I'm also balanced. I want the best for America, and I want the best for the world. I want the best for Nigeria and Africa. And so I'm looking at these candidates about what are their positions on African issues. And I'm confident that with Kamala Harris, we'll have a better chance of improving U.S. policy toward Africa and toward Nigeria.
But you mentioned the celebrity endorsements for Kamala Harris. Do Americans still have that celebrity culture, especially in terms of politics? Because we saw all of that, endorsement for Secretary Hillary Clinton, and yet she did not win the election. Will those endorsements have any impact, on whether she wins the election or not?
Well, I think they definitely will. Especially one of the biggest demographics is young people. And these entertainers like Taylor Swift directly speaks to them, and so they're on digital. They, as soon as she gave her announcement, they got all over Twitter and got all over the social media, telling their friends. They're talking about it in the club. They're talking about it among themselves. So I think these people like a Taylor Swift does have a tremendous impact on on young people, especially who are not committed to vote. So I think in this case, absolutely yes.
Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, has asked for another debate. It's without working. The Trump camp has he said they wouldn't do another debate, but is that without working in her favor? Or should she be doing more media interviews at this time?
Well, I think both of them are important. The fact that Trump don't want to have the third debate is not going to play well with his own constituency. And he knows for a fact that if he has another debate with Kamala Harris, it'll be more of the same. She's a former prosecutor. This is what they do for a living. They get to the facts. And so he knows that he's not going to beat her in another debate. And so he wants to forego the debate and make it sound like the media is unfair, come up with all kinds of excuses. But I think she's going to keep pressing forward, and I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to accept the third debate. Sure, she should do more direct interviews with media, and I think she's speaking to the congressional with the National Black Journalist today in a direct interview, and she's going to do more of that too. She gained a lot of confidence. Many of us didn't know that she had this in her while she was the vice president. But the vice president has to stay stay in the shadow of the president. Whatever Biden said, she had to endorse it, And so she came across as somewhat stilted because she was not able to be herself. But now that she no longer has that constraint, she's able to freely express herself, freely express her beliefs, really talk about what she wants to do in her administration, and I think it's a resounding, in a positive way for her campaign.
There is an increased level of optimism in the Democratic camp after the debate, but isn't that too early, considering that everybody thought that, or most people thought that Secretary Clinton was going to win that election against Trump, but Trump won that election?
Well, that's true. That's true. Like I said, everything we're talking about here is conjecture. The bottom line is November the 4th. And so we all going to have to get out and vote. Right now, a lot of emphasis on get out the vote. That's all I'm hearing in the churches. That's what I'm hearing in the sororities and fraternities. That's what I heard all this week at the Congressional Black Caucus. Get out the vote. The bottom line, we got to turn the vote out. The last thing we need is people to be complacent and say, oh, she got it done, so I don't need to vote. That's the last thing we need. So there's a lot of work ahead. This next month is going to be grueling on both sides. Both of them understand this, that they got to get their people out to vote. And so I think the proof is in how well we get that job done. And I'm quite confident that the Democrats have the upper hand this time.
And there's also a vice presidential debate expected, I think, next month. What would that have any importance in terms of swaying voters? Or that's just some ceremony?
Oh, I think so. Governor Walz, who none of us have heard about. We didn't know who he was before she picked him. And I would think that she was going to go with Shapiro from Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania is such a big, important state. But she chose Governor Walz out of Minnesota. And boy, he's a delight. He's a no holds barred. He's very folksy. He speaks to white people. And he speaks to white people. And he speaks in a way that former wrestling coach, he's your best neighbor that you would want to have. And he doesn't take, he's not afraid of anything. So I think he will win the vice presidential debate. Already the Republican Vance is backing up on a lot of things, and I think it was probably a bad choice. I think the assessment of the Republicans, it was probably not the right choice for the vice president job. And so I think the Democrats have a definite edge when that debate takes place, and everybody will be watching it. But I can't see how Vance will outdo Governor Walz. So I think that it's going to fall in the favor of the Democrats.
But considering that Pennsylvania is perhaps now the most important state in this election, should she have picked Shapiro, who is the governor of Pennsylvania and who has a popularity rating of over 50% in his state?
Governor Shapiro is absolutely. What's amazing is all the people who ran for the Democratic nomination who wanted to run are all strongly supporting the vice president now. And Shapiro is certainly, he's a pit bull pushing Pennsylvanians to follow his lead and support Kamala Harris. It's going to be a tight race, no doubt about it. All of the big cities are supporting Harris. All the rural communities, all these little small towns are Trump based. And so, the question is going to come out is who's going to turn out their base. And it's going to be very tight, but I suspect that the Democrats have a slight edge.
All right, so let's expand this further and look at what their presidency will mean for the world. Both of them touched on issues of foreign policy during the debate. Afghanistan, Ukraine, Israel, and Hamas war. And I know that you're a Democrat, but I want us to look at this really objectively and talk about what the Trump presidency or Kamala Harris presidency will mean for the rest of the world.
Well, for sure, for Africa, Trump presidency would be a disaster. All of the things we're talking about, trade policy, we're talking about 2 seats in the Security Council. We're talking about, a change in how the U.S. has related to Africa historically. I think the possibilities with the Democratic president are great. I think the possibilities with the Trump presidency are nil. I think issues of the Middle East, Kamala Harris getting a lot of grief because of the war in Gaza and the Israeli situation. And, they're trying to figure out how best to balance it. We want to stop the war. We certainly want to stop the war, but we want to also help the Palestinians who have been devastated by this war. And, so she's trying to strike a balance, and the Palestinian community or those who support the Palestinians here, of course, that's not good enough. They want to punish Israel and, help Palestine. And the U.S. position is to stop the war and help the Palestinians. So I think there's all kinds of other hot spots out here. I think that with the Harris presidency, we have a chance of a balanced U.S. policy that can do some good in this really complicated world. And I think with a Trump presidency, it would actually push toward the wrong direction in the long term. The relationship with Russia, the relationship with China. There's a lot of discord in the world, and right now we need a president who can actually, talk to world leaders, the United Nations and the World Bank, and talk to them and try to come up with some solutions that we all can live a better life around the world. So I think on the foreign policy side, certainly the Democratic candidate would be the better candidate for the world.
Would the Trump presidency not also mean freedom for Africa? We've seen several sanctions on some African countries or governments. because of decisions they make, especially when it has to do with LGBTQ rights. We see how the Biden administration has responded to those countries in Africa. And people wonder, with Trump, Trump wouldn't interfere. We saw more interference with the Biden administration.
I personally think, the work I do, I'm a lobbyist. I influence U.S. policy toward Africa. And I can say that the Democrats have not done great in Africa. I'm not really happy with all that, the Democrats say they did in Africa over the past 4 years. There's much more that could and should be done to help Africa. But I do know that we have access to ideals. A lot of the Biden program is things that I gave them. The Young African Leaders Initiative, YALI, that's what I recommended to Obama, and it's a great program, and they want to expand it. To have an annual meeting or biannual meeting of African leaders so that, we can make sure we're hearing what Africans are saying. We're also telling them to stop lecturing Africa. Don't tell these Sahel countries what kind of government they need to have. We need to be more supportive. There are many ways we need to improve the U.S. policy toward Africa. In the case of Nigeria, we need to help you with your electrification and not just talk about it. We need to help you with issues that affect the country. Nigeria is a really important country, not just for Africa, but for the world. And I think that we have a chance with the Democrat at the helm. With the Republican, I'm not so sure we'll be able to get much done with a divided Congress and plus the president is not attuned. President Trump would not be attuned to supporting Africa. We know what he called African countries, when he was president. He said that he basically called them the most despicable countries in the world. And he meant that. But that's what a lot of his base thinks about Africa. So I'm thinking that in the case of Africa, Africa clearly should be rooting for Kamala Harris to be the next president.
Well, following developments in the U.S. as regards the election, we'll continue to see how things play out till the election day, November the 4th. Thank you so much for your time. Melvin Foote, who is the president of the Constituency for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Standpoint this week. Remember, you can watch the repeat broadcast at 11 p.m. tonight and 5 a.m. On Sunday. Thank you for watching. I am Precious Amayo.